So as I said, this is a pretty general chapter, and we're going to start it with a pretty general question. What is statistics? Now, in your mind, you probably have a somewhat clear idea about what statistics is and what it could be. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I'm going to try and build up a bit of a sense of what stats is, what stats are, using a fairly broad example. So let's say you want to find out how long books are. You want to find out something like an average, or you want to find out what's an unusual book length, or you want to get a sense of how many books are above a certain length. You just want to figure something out about it. And, well, if you want to do that, you have to think about the fact that you've got quite a few options to consider there. Like if you want to take all books, that's a functionally infinite amount in there, especially if you're just taking anything that has printed word in there as something of a book. And from that, how do you want to handle what you find when you make your selections? Are you planning on doing some sort of comparison based on what sort of genres are in there? Or are you going to think about things in terms of the split between, say, nonfiction and fiction? Or even when you get past all that stuff, or get to the things that are written maybe long form, what avenues are you leaving open for poetry? Where do short stories fit in there? How are you going to collect all of this information? And what kind of information are you actually trying to find? Are you looking at how many books have red covers in there as well? Are you going to just take your length based on number of words, or is it number of letters, or is it number of pages? You've got tons of different ways that you can approach a problem like that. There's tons of different options that you have to work with. And that's the sort of question that you can think of in the context of statistics. So, a bit exactingly, at least according to the book, the definition of statistics is that it is the science of collecting, organizing, analyzing, and interpreting data in order to make decisions. And when we're thinking about data, just to be clear, data is just that collection of information that we're trying to consider. So that's the information coming from whatever observations, counts, measurements, responses, the things that we're looking at when we're going to draw our statistics. That's our data. And again, when you think data, your head probably turns numerical. You start thinking about numbers like heights or weights or lengths, like with those books. But truth be told, data doesn't need to be confined into that kind of category. Things like qualities, like the fact that a book cover is red, is a data point, but it's just not the sort of thing that you measure in quite the same way as the length of a book, for that matter. And generally, when you're thinking about data, this is where phrases like studies show or according to research come into play. That's what we're doing with stats, is trying to use data to be able to make statements like that, whether they're useful statements or not so useful statements, where that distinction can be drawn pretty broadly based on context and what sort of evidence you have. So, to put it in simpler terms, statistics is about being able to say things in regards to certain situations. It's about being able to make certain interpretations. I always like to tell my students this at the beginning, that for me, stats is an interpretive science. And we'll talk about some ways you can split things up in terms of what we're looking at with statistics, but at its heart, what statistics is most often used for, what we are generally most interested in when it comes to statistics, is being able to make those kinds of interpretations about the context in which our data is found, about the world in which we live. And the next thing we'll talk about is what we can do with that data That is where the data can come from and where it can go.